The amount of self-control it takes not to just play Parts of the Caribbean music over this review is it takes a lot of self-control, I'll just say that. Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb is the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. It is also the second trilogy in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series, and also it is, I think, one of the best books I've ever read in my life. So I had plans to read other things after the Book of the New Sun. I was going to read Howling Dark because I'm reading a Sun Eater book each month in preparation for Shadows Upon Time, and now I'm way behind on that one because I just get caught up in other things. I was going to read Dungeon Crawler Carl, but for whatever reason, I finally passed Ship of Magic on my shelf here, and I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to read that. I'm really feeling it. To give a little bit of context, I also recently read the Farseer trilogy as well this year for the first time. That's obviously a well talked about series on BookTube, and yeah, Farseer trilogy was pretty good. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed most of it, and I felt like there was a lot of potential in the series, but it wasn't fully realized yet. Even though I really did love the writing and so many of the characters in that series, I could just tell that there was. I felt like there was more to do. And what's interesting is when I read Farseer, I kind of started Farseer because I heard the premise of the Live Ship Traders trilogy, and I was like, I want to read that trilogy, so I read Farseer first. So this was all kind of to get to the Live Ship trilogy because it sounded like something I would really enjoy. All I knew about the Life Ship trilogy was that it was about sentient ships, and I thought, I have no idea how that works. That sounds cool. I want to read it. So after I finished Farseer, I took a little bit of a break, and now I'm back in the realm of the Elderlings with Ship of Magic. And yes, indeed, the Live Ship trilogy is about sentient ships. That's all the spoiler-free stuff you're going to get. And now I'm going to go into a review where I will probably accidentally reveal spoilers because I don't know how to talk about things I like without spoiling them. So be warned. There's so many other spoiler-free reviews that you could go see. Anyway, Ship of Magic. Where to begin? I think I loved every single page of this book. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. And I don't know where to start, except I guess with the characters, because they're all awesome. And when I say they're all awesome, I do not mean that they are all likable. No siree. Holy cow. There are three characters in this that are some of the most, not some of the most hateable characters I have ever read. They are very believable, they're very human, but they are very despicable, and I hate them so much. Where do we begin with the hateable characters? I guess we begin with Kenneth, a character who's so selfish and so psychopathic, and yet because he never reveals those tendencies or those inner thoughts to others, everybody thinks he's a really great guy, and they're very loyal to him, despite him using everybody as a pawn in his own game for his own selfish means. And the more you see how people become loyal to him, the more you see how people love him and fall for him and fall for his act. It is kind of horrifying. Sorker is a great character. There's so much nuance there, even though he's a side character. You never get his POV, but you get so much about him through Kenneth's POV, and you like him so much, and you love him, and you want him to succeed in his goal. And Kenneth is only using him and his goals for his own means, and that's really sad. And Sorker thinks that he's a good guy, that he wants to free all these slaves, and Kenneth's doing it for selfish means. That's just really hard to read. Etta clearly cares for him, and he just constantly refers to her as the whore in his head, and you're just like, dude, stop. Like, these people, they clearly care about you, and you're such an evil person. But what's funny about that is, as much as I hate Kenneth, he is, I think, way more likable than the other two characters. And of course, if you've read the book, then you already know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Kyle Haven. Now, apparently, I'm really glad I didn't know anything about the book going into this, because I came to a very natural hatred of Kyle on my own. And Kyle Haven as a character is one of my, probably, I mean, I have to say, one of my favorite characters I've ever read, just because he produced such a strong visceral emotional reaction in me. And the reason I think he did is because, despite how hateable he is, quite frankly, he's a very real character. He's a character that is very human and is the kind of character that you can meet today, basically. In fact, I do know people in my life close to me that are like Kyle in this book. In fact, I would, while reading it, I would get really angry, and my wife would lean over and be like, what's going on? And I would read her passages from the book about Kyle, about things he would say or things he would do. And we would commiserate because we know certain people in our life that are close to us that's like Kyle. And in some ways, it was very infuriating and almost triggering. In some ways, it was very cathartic to talk through this and be like, I just can't believe this. And in other ways, it's just shocking because Kyle is so laughably and comically terrible. It's kind of crazy how I think almost normal it is some people like this actually exist in the real world. He is one of those people that is passive aggressive and manipulative, and he's a gaslighter, and he's very happy when you do things the way he wants to do them and the way he wants them done, or the way he thinks things should be run. But the moment you veer off course even a little bit, he begins the manipulation and the gaslighting and the passive aggression or the outright aggression or the physical abuse. And he thinks he's doing the right thing. That's what's really freaky about it. He thinks he's caring for his family, all the while he abuses them and manipulates them and traumatizes them. And it is pretty harrowing to read. I'm not going to lie. Kyle is he is an experience and a half, to say the least. But he's a real character. He's written well. You understand him, right? Because these people are understandable. I think they're just also despicable, and the things he does to the people that you do like is just it's hard to read, to be honest. But he's an interesting character. If a character can produce like a visceral reaction to me like that, an emotional reaction, not many characters have done that. Then you've done something right. I know a lot of people hate Joffrey from A Song of Ice and Fire from Game of Thrones, but I'm here to tell you that I think Kyle is way more hateable than Joffrey, in my opinion. I think I hate him probably about 5 times more than I hate Joffrey in Game of Thrones. So take that what you will. And then on the other side of that, we finally have Malta, and Malta is Kyle's daughter. And oh boy, it makes so much sense that Malta is Kyle's daughter. Let me tell you, the apple did not fall far from the tree. Malta is just as hateable and infuriating and annoying as Kyle, except the good thing about Malta is you kind of give her some leeway, because as much as you want to throttle her and throw her across the room, and she makes you want to throw the book away in disgust. The thing is, she's 12. She's 12 and she's emulating her father, and she's learned these wrong habits from her father, and you kind of give her some leeway in that sense, because she's not as smart as she thinks she is, and we've all been there when we were 12. I know you were. Don't lie to me. I was that way when I was 12. And so it's frustrating, but it's also kind of like, I get it. You're 12. I was like that when I was 12. I almost see a little bit of myself in you, the way you feel superior to all these adults around you, even though they clearly know better than you. But you're almost 13, so you think you've reached the height of wisdom. We've all been there. And Malta encapsulates that to a T. And holy cow, she's so frustrating, but she's such a well-realized character. I mean, I don't know many 12-year-olds who aren't like Malta when they're about to hit 13, unless you're unusually mature for your age, which it isn't normally the case. But yeah, Malta and Kyle and Kenneth are some pretty infuriating characters. But on the flip side of that, there are some really likable characters. You've got Wintro and Althea and Brashen and Ronica and Kefria, and all of these characters are very human and relatable and likable. They've all got things that tendencies that are annoying and that can be frustrating. Like Brashen's addiction, or Althea's petulance, or Wintro's holiness, holier than thou act, right? Or Kefria's almost not immaturity, but her being coddled her whole life leads to her almost being unable to step up the way she should be able to at this point in her life, because of the way that Ronica has controlled her. It's all very human and very sad, but you do like these people, and you want to see them succeed. You want to see them get one up on Malta or Kenneth or Kyle, and because those guys are just so much more evil than these other characters. And what's great about these characters is you understand their points of view, and even though there's things about them that frustrate you, they are so much more likable and relatable to you because of these things going on around them, and because of the real tragedy that they're all facing too. I think that's what's tough about this is Ship of Magic. Yeah, it's like about pirates and traders and sentient ships and sailing and all that, but it's also it's a story about a family in the midst of tragedy. And it almost reminds me of the same vibes as almost of like Haunting of Hill House, in the way, yeah, that's a horror show, right? But it's also really about shared family trauma and tragedy, and how that affects a family as they grow up. And Ship of Magic is very similar to that, right? Like there is a lot of similarities in the themes there that they're tackling, and some of the things going on, and it's very emotional and it's very engrossing. In fact, honestly, I know a lot of people said that the first 400 pages is the slow stuff that you have to get through for it to get good, because it's the beginning. And I just disagree. I thought the first 400 pages were my favorite part, because you come attached to these characters so quickly, and then when this tragedy is about to happen, you're already feeling for them, and then it happens, and you see the fallout for those first couple days after a family member dies, and to see how the family is mourning, but there's also action that they have to take, and certain things that have been set into motion before the tragedy take unfold, and it alienates family members from each other. It makes them angry at each other. It causes fights on what should be a time where they're united in their grief. They split up over things that shouldn't really matter that much, but do, and it's really sad to see. But it was so captivating for me. It was very engrossing, and it was very emotional. Honestly, that first 400 pages I thought were my favorite part of the book, and I love that stuff. And then finally, you've got the best characters of all, the live ships themselves, which, holy cow, I knew they were sentient ships, but I didn't know anything about how that worked. And man, it's so cool. These ships are made of this special wood, and when enough generations die on the decks of the ship, their memories basically seep into the wood, and then the wood quickens and becomes sentient, and the person that is at the figurehead of the ship becomes like a being. The being is the figurehead, but it's also the whole ship. But they are like a conglomeration of all the memories of the ancestors of these families rolled up into a new person. That's so cool. That's so cool. I love that. I love how learning about these ships helps you learn a little bit about the families that run the ships. I love how these characters embody the themes of the book at large, because a major theme of the book is characters at points in their lives that have lost control. They've lost control of the events of their lives. They've lost control of their ability to um, for their lives are not going the way they want to or the way they think they should, and they have lost that ability to control that, and they feel like they're driftless, they're at the whims of others, that they can't do anything, they can't take their fate into their own hands. And you think about that, and yeah, that's tough and that's hard to read about, but then you think about it in terms of the live ships, and what else could thematically encapsulate that idea of not being able to control your own destiny, other than being literally a ship who is sailed by somebody else, right? This also comes into play when you tackle the slave trade, which is also a huge theme in this book, right? At every level, there are these characters that are trying to get control back in their lives, and they don't have them. And I think the live ships are a good example of that. But they're just so likable. Vivacia and Paragon and Ophelia are like some of my favorite characters like I've ever read. Vivacia is heartbreaking to read because she's basically like a naive child who is immediately after she's born thrust into some of the harshest elements that humanity has to offer: slavery, death, torture, mutiny and mass murder and genocide, all these things that she has to literally experience because she is a live ship, and it's distressing. Not to mention the fact that she needs to have a bond with somebody, but the person that she has to bond with doesn't want to bond with her, and how hurtful that is. Like, that's just heartbreaking to read. Then you've got Paragon, who's clearly a victim of something in his past, right? The implication is that he did something wrong, but I think you can tell from his chapters that that's not the case, that there's more to that story there. And I think he's wrongfully beached here, and something happened in his past, and so there's so much trauma there with him, and you just want to give him a hug, and you just want to tell him it's okay, because he's basically just almost an innocent child, again thrust with so much trauma, and he's also an indicator of what might happen to Vivacia if things don't go well, or things don't work out better, and that's also heartbreaking as well. And then you've got Ophelia, who is actually just a fun, cool live ship character. I love her. She's got a big history there. She feels like an old woman, like a grandmother, but she's also a ship. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know how that couldn't be cool, right? So you've got all these characters that are hateable or likable or very relatable. They all have multiple POVs that you understand, some of them that you can relate to. These come in conflict with each other, and they are, as a whole, tie into the themes of lack of agency and lack of control in your life, of oppression and the dregs of humanity. All these things come together and then slather a little bit of piracy adventure on top, and you have what I would consider literally one of the best fantasy books that I've ever read in my life. From the first page, I was glued in. I was glued to these characters. I was invested in their story. I was invested in their grief and their trauma. I wanted them to work through the issues. I wanted them to fix things. But there's also a level of dread on top of it because of the way the storylines have to converge with the way Kenneth's storyline is going. I mean, it's very clear from the beginning, how Kenneth's going to come in contact with the Vivacia and what's going to happen. And so there's a level of dread there. And the dread is hard because you love these characters so much and you don't want to see anything bad happen to them, but bad things happen to them over and over and over. And it's heartbreaking, and it is almost emotionally taxing to read sometimes, but it's no less engrossing and also sometimes cool. And there are like fun elements too. There are fun elements, to some of the action scenes and the sailing scenes. It's just it's very evocative too. The way it's written, I think, is even better than the Farseer trilogy. You feel like you're on the ships with these people. You feel like you know these ships so instantly. It captures that feeling of being on the sea. I'm assuming because I haven't been on the sea, but I've read these books, which seems like basically the next best thing. Yeah, I think in every way so far, the Live Ship trilogy is better than the Farseer trilogy. I think the characters are better. I think the writing is better. I think the world building is better, by the way, which I didn't really mention. I mean, you've got the world building of the live ships themselves, but then you've got Bingtown and the surrounding cities like Jamalia and the Rainwild River. All these things are so cool. I think the scope of the world is bigger than Farseer, especially the first two books, and it's immediately better and more understandable. The scope is bigger. Just like everything about this is bigger. It's one of those series that while the scope is bigger, the stakes are bigger. It's the family drama, the family story that is going to ground you, and it's those characters that ground you. And then you lather on those heavy themes, and you've just got like a recipe for one of the best books that you've ever read. It's not necessarily an action-packed book, but so I mean, I've called it to some people like a pirate book, but it's not really a pirate book. I think probably book two will be more of a pirate book based on things that happen at the end of this one. But it is a really, really good story with really good themes, with really good characters, and if anything, like you have all that, and just the fact that like these characters, because they produce such a visceral emotional response in me, to me, that's an indication of how well good it is. How well good of how good it is. You know what I mean. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about Ship of Magic. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. I've already started book two, about 200 pages into that one, and I will be doing a review for that one when it's over. If anything bad happens to Paragon or Vivacia or Ophelia, I will quit reading forever. And you can hold me to that promise. I am pretty certain something bad is going to happen to them, and I'm really scared because I love them so much, and I do not want anything. I do not want anything to happen. But no spoilers in the comments. But I'm excited to finish this trilogy, and my love for not just this series but Robin Hobb and Realm of the Elderlings as a whole has gone way up. And after Ship of Magic, I liked Five Seer a lot, but I didn't quite know if I'm like going to read all of Realm of the Elderlings. After Ship of Magic, I'm bought in, man. All 16 books and 5 trilogies, whatever it is, I'm reading it all at this point. Even if none of them are as good as Ship of Magic, Ship of Magic is so good. Hobb has earned that trust from me. I will be reading every single one of these books, and I am excited to do so. So there you go. That's my review of Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, one of the best books I've ever read. You need to check it out immediately if you have the opportunity. Until next time, guys. See ya.